What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Valley coming at you with the one, the only, the certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. We are abandoning our off-season look-ahead ship to talk about a trade that went down on Sunday, Father's Day. And I guess we're going to end up doing like two off-season look-aheads, though, in this, because we got to talk about the Magic and the Grizzlies and where they go from here. But we're going to get into the trade details, the fallout, the cap stuff, all of it. But Grant, before we belly flop in, as we are inclined to do, how the heck are you?
I am, let's see, humbled by the creativity of the Magic and Grizzlies, because you and I have probably made up hundreds of fake trades or discussed them over the course of these look-aheads and just other general work, and I don't think we landed on the one that actually happened. So I guess we maybe are not creative enough.
Or are we too creative that not even NBA front offices are thinking of our deals? That's what I'm
Great spin. Really good spin on that.
We're going to start here. It looks like Charania was right, Grant. And I'll read the quote from May 27th. He said, "This is the most, I think, anticipation team executives have had over an offseason. I think this offseason might be," quote, again, the most craziest ever. 11 out of 10 phrasing. No notes there from Shams. But I think there was this skepticism after he said that, where it was, well, there's only one team with cap space. Everyone's going to be trying to navigate the aprons. How many people are going to be available via trade if Giannis decides that he doesn't want to get moved from Milwaukee? So there's always sort of that, not people trying to pour cold water, but they're trying to approach this from a more pragmatic perspective of, oh no, this offseason is not going to be as ridiculous as it seems. And I'm sorry, but if we get a Desmond Bane trade where there's 4 first-round picks plus a swap going out in the middle of the finals, like trades have happened in the finals before, including when the Nuggets were in the finals themselves and made that draft pick trade. I think OKC was involved in that. But they're never, right? They're never like this. And so I'm inclined to think that Shams was right, that we're in for, quote, one of the most craziest off seasons ever.
Yeah, Desmond Bane for 5 first-round assets in the middle of June moves right past more crazier and definitely into most craziest. So you got to look. Guess what? He's connected. So what he lacks in what he lacks in grammatical accuracy and phrasing, he makes up for. And like just knowing, like in some sense, like we knew the dearth of cap space generally, and like all these extensions that got signed seemed to suggest things wouldn't be, there wouldn't be a ton of activity. But then all that does is really make trades like the only way to get things done. And I think that's kind of what he was nodding to, is like, there will be players changing teams. It's just it's going to happen through really what the most excitingest way possible, which is trades.
and I think also what goes into that is the like wide openness of the landscape, and especially in the East, to where I think the Magic just showed this, and we're going to get into it in a second, but like the Celtics are down for next year. Even if they decide to run everybody back and they're still really good, everyone's probably looking at, and I don't think this is fair to the Pacers because the Pacers are really good, but it's, well, why can't we be that team? And the Cavs still exist, the Knicks will be back, but there are going to be teams that I think feel more emboldened to do something, or I think that there'll be teams that might feel like they're either on their last leg with the current setup, maybe Minnesota going in on a Kevin Durant trade if that happens, or teams like the Grizzlies that have kind of just shown, oh, we're getting kind of stale. If we're going to have to reinvest in like the big 3 technically with the Jaren Jackson Jr. New contract coming up, maybe they pivot out of that, and that makes people available that we weren't thinking of. And then finally, there's a lack of cap space, but free agents got to go somewhere. And so I'm kind of just wondering, kind of that general surprise when you see Gary Trent Jr. take the minimum or Tyus Jones take the minimum. Are we in for more of those, like, let's call them medium-sized shocks too over the offseason?
Yeah, it could be. I think the first thing you said really is germane to this specific trade, because my first thought after I saw the trade had happened was like, man, Orlando, like, they might think they're pretty close, right? Because this is, and I think the reason that that's not a crazy stance to take is because the top of the East looks shaky, and that has to just reset every team's risk calculus. Like, this maybe isn't a trade you make if Boston is whole and isn't facing this teardown. And you know what I mean? Like, okay, so this assures us we're going to finish third in the conference, and then we still have you know what I mean? I think Boston specifically just not being in the picture as a contender, and then you watch Cleveland go 60 plus wins and then bow out like it did. It's like, and now we're talking about a Garland trade, or at least whispering about it. Like, it just feels like a trade like this. If you're Orlando, you look at it and you say, like, all right, let's do it. Let's shoot our shot. Why not? Like, let's go for it.
And the final thing for me on this is, I remember people saying that the days, just like the Mikal Bridges trade was kind of the last straw of, oh, you're not going to see teams give up all this first round equity for players who are either like barely all-stars or not even all-stars in this case. Mm-hmm. And this was kind of a reminder that I think if teams believe they're even remotely close enough, that no, those types of really pick-packed packages, how's that for some alliteration? Pick-packed packages are still going to happen. Because this is consecutive off seasons now where at least 4 first-round picks have been traded for someone who has not only never made an all-star game, but may never make an all-star game. I mean, it's easier for Bane in the East, but it's not like there's a ton of other talented guards there. And so that's like, people were worried about the Rudy Gobert trade, who's a generational defender and just a perennial defensive player of the year candidate. And now we're just seeing these guys are really good, but are they even like second best player on a championship team material? The answer for Mikal Bridges is clearly no, and yet they're still just going for these massive hauls.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. We should get into the packages here and talk about each side, because there's quite a bit to unpack.
Do you want to take us through the trade details?
Yeah, so here are the basics. Orlando gets Desmond Bane, who has 4 years and $163.2 million left on his deal. So we're talking $40 million a year for, I mean, a guy that had a rough season last year by his standards, which was still 19, 6, and 5, and he shot 39% from 3. That's a down year, so keep that in mind. In exchange, the Grizzlies get Cole Anthony, taken 15 picks ahead of Desmond Bane in the same draft, who's got 2 years and $26.2 million left. Because he comes from Orlando, he has a team option on the second year of that deal. They love their team options there. Contavious Caldwell-Pope is also coming to Memphis. 2 years, $43.2 million. Player option, change up there for 26-27. I think probably the most head-turning aspect here, there are 4 first-round picks coming to Memphis. Number 16 in this year's draft, the Phoenix Suns, 2026, correct? 2028 and 2030 unprotected from Orlando, and a 2029 first round swap with top 2 protection from Orlando goes to Memphis. So essentially 5 first round assets if you want to just do the quick and dirty version of it, plus Cole Anthony, plus KCP for Desmond Bane. What did you think just when you see the first report of it, that it's this many first round assets going for Desmond Bane? I think you kind of alluded to it, but was your reaction like, oh my God, that's a lot? Or was it, let's look at what kind of first we're talking about?
So you have that reflexive reaction saying, oh my God, that's so much. And then you're waiting for the protections to trickle out. And then we find out that they're unprotected for the most part, because we know number 16, this year's number 16. By the way, one of my secondary reactions was, now I'm going to have to go read that fucking 2026 draft pick language. It amounts to, I'm going to try and simplify it to this. Okay. It's basically the second most favorable first round pick between Washington, Orlando, and Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And so that's like pretty good. It's probably going to be Phoenix's pick is what it'll probably end up being. So I was waiting, basically. I was like, no, some of these on the back end have to be protected. And as of now, it looks like they're not. And so then it goes, all right, well, the Magic are planning on being pretty damn good for a while then, I'm assuming. But so was that your reaction as well?
Yeah, It felt like a lot. And then what I fixated on was like anytime there's just straight up unprotected picks going, it's like, oh, that's because those are the theoretical crown jewels of a deal, right? It's the real hedge against the other team where who knows, maybe that's a top 5 pick, right? Especially if you're talking about 2030, just like because the Magic could cycle through like 3 different cores by then, just the way
they probably will if the recent trends are any indication. Yeah.
But so really, okay, 16, sure. That 26, which, yeah, you're not getting the Washington side of that, which would have massive upside. Orlando will be better than Phoenix. So maybe that's in the range of 10 to 20 or something like that. Maybe a little better, who knows. 28 and 30, those are probably in the 20s. You would assume if things go as Orlando expects them to go. The 29 swap, all right, that's another one that is right in the middle there. It might be in the 20s. So it's kind of like, if Orlando's as good as it seems like it ought to be, and definitely as good as it thinks it will be with this new core, you're not getting a player better than Desmond Bane. You wouldn't think, even though he did go really late. Like, he's a bad example to use. But you know what I mean?
Grant, you might get 5 first-round picks that come ahead of where Desmond Bane was drafted. How is that not a win?
Yeah, right. But what I landed on was like, it's still a lot. It's still a lot of like, just in terms of opportunity cost, you can use these first for other stuff, right? Like they're sweeteners, they're whatever. But I don't think you could realistically expect to get a player better than Desmond Bane with any of these picks in isolation. Now, together, I'm sure like Kevin Pelton or somebody did the net value of them is X, and it does make sense or whatever. But it's like, just in a vacuum, Bane is like a guy that if there was a Desmond Bane in this year's draft, like you said, like he's going to have Desmond Bane's first 5 years of his career, he's going top 3, right? Or like something crazy like that. So I from Orlando's perspective, I can see the logic of like, we don't think these picks are going to be any good. We're getting a guy who, and we should get into this, like everybody that's been haranguing us for not going and getting a great high volume 3-point shooter because we don't have one. We're setting all these records for being the worst volume, worst efficiency 3-point team. Like, we got the guy. Like, shut up, everybody. Yep. Like, now now we've talked about you need a playmaker too, but actually Bane is pretty darn good as an off guard in that respect. 5+ assists a couple years in a row, increases pick and roll efficiency and volume until the Grizzlies got all weird and stopped setting screens last year. Like, this is pretty close to the best you could do with the package they sent out, unless you're talking about some super duper star that says, send me to Orlando. Do you think that's a fair assessment? Like, he's the guy, and maybe none of these picks end up amounting to more than like a 7th or 8th man on a good team, right? Like, that's kind of where I landed.
Yeah, I think shocker, we agree. I know it's a surprise for everyone who listens to this. The other thing to consider here too, or a couple things. This contract that he's on, never going to be 25% of the salary cap, and it runs through his age 30 season, sorry. That's not even the end of his prime. So, like, that's kind of perfect alignment. I mean, we'll get into the expenses of it long term in a second. The other thing, too, is when you mentioned this is the best guy you could have done, I think it's also really the best you could have done when you're looking at who the Magic favor. And so we've mentioned Anthony Simons how many times for Orlando. He is really bad on the defensive end. Desmond Bane is not. And in this system, he's probably going to be like, because you take an average defender and you just plop him into what Orlando's able to do with Jalen Suggs and Franz and even Paolo, their bigs. Jonathan Isaac is there. Anthony Black is there. Someone's going to make the case that he should be all defense next year. Like, those are the types of lineups he will be within. And the final thing is, too, just to maybe like tidy up what you were saying about the picks, if you were to set the over-under on the number of picks that land in the top 15 that they sent out, including the swap, I would set it at 0.5. And I like, maybe you take the over, but if you set it at 1.5, I'm taking the under. Like, to me, it seems like this might be a one top 15 selection somewhere. And it could be next year, depending on what Phoenix does, although they don't have an incentive to be bad unless they control their own pick, so probably not.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Top 15 is a great cutoff. Like, I don't think that's likely. The other thing about Bane, and you hit it, like he fits what Orlando, like Anthony Simons would have amounted to a concession in some ways because it's like, oh, you can handle having Simons in your starting or closing lineup or whatever because you have Jalen Suggs and this defensive infrastructure. Like it'll cover for him. Like Bane is a good defender, and I think will look even better, like you said. Also, and I mean this as a compliment, he's kind of an asshole. Like, he's a competitive asshole, and I think that's like Orlando's type. Like, they're very into that. And so from like a skill standpoint and just like a makeup standpoint, he's kind of perfect. And we're not even talking about the shooting, which is like, he's a 41% 3-point shooter for his career, and he gets them up. Like, that's going to cure what ails the Magic in a lot of ways.
And by the way, I think it's disingenuous when people frame it like, oh, the Lakers only gave up 1 first-round pick for Luka and Bane got, like, Anthony Davis is worth like 5 first. We don't support that trade, but the other part of the framing that I don't like, KCP's contract had become a net negative. And so that's part of the value so maybe you could get Desmond Bane if you were sending out straight expiring salary, but I don't even know if there'd be a team, and I'm not trying to insult Cole Anthony here, is someone just taking Cole Anthony into their mid-level exception? I don't know, maybe. So I think part of the value is the players you were sending out. Yeah, KCP defended at an all defense level last year, and he will help Memphis there. But he was outside the comfy confines of having Nikola Jokic. He didn't look too great in Orlando last year. So you were paying in part to get off that deal. But we need to get into the actual impact for the Magic, which that's the potential that could make it all worth it. You mentioned a bunch of the Bane stuff. We all need to appreciate just how dire the Magic were in need of offense and have been for some time. They've not been a top 15 offense, Grant, since 2012 when Dwight Howard was on the team. They have not been outside the bottom 10 in offensive efficiency since 2017. Last year, they were 26th in points per possession, 27th in the half court, 22nd in 2-point percentage, dead last in 3-point percentage, and dead last in their shooting percentage on wide open jumpers, so 10 plus feet out. That is a functional atrocity. And it spilled over into quote unquote their core lineups. When Suggs, Franz, and Paolo were on the floor, the Magic's offense was in the 21st percentile. You already mentioned Bane's numbers. Over the past 4 years, though, he's clearing 20 points and 4 assists while hitting 40+% of his threes. There's only one other player who has done that during the same span while matching Desmond Bane's 3-point volume. Would you care to guess who it is? I bet you could guess who it is.
Is it just Steph?
It's just Steph.
Yeah.
And so, no, he's not Steph, but like the Magic have no gravity away from the ball on this team. And he's also someone who last year, he actually took more off the dribble threes than off the catch threes. And now you're inserting him into an offense where you're probably still going to need him to do that, like hit those off the dribble jumpers at points, but you don't need to do it nearly as much. So he is just like if you wanted to get someone who had some on-ball creation, but knew how to exist away from the ball and wasn't going to hurt your defense in any way, this is like the perfect fit.
Yeah.
And I think unless you have anything to add on why it's good, the only other thing to talk about would be they're moving forward without a real floor general type, at least as of now. And this feels like a big bet on, one, you mentioned Suggs' playmaking. He's improved a lot coming out of drives. He's run a ton of pick and rolls over the past couple of years. So there's that, but it also just feels like a bet that you think Jalen Suggs can do a lot of that too moving forward.
I think it's a bet on Paolo improving as a playmaker, which I'm happy to take that on front. Same thing. Like the idea of the Magic that has always been so intriguing is the amount of playmaking they can get from their forwards. And that partly allows Suggs to be the best version of himself because he's not just a natural 10 assists a game guy. So I think Bane adds to that because Suggs is okay and getting better at that stuff. And Bane has been very good for his position at that stuff. The other thing too, just to sort of contrast the Bane acquisition with what it might have otherwise been, just to take Simons as an example, because that's just the guy we won't shut up about. Or if it had been like Malik Monk or whatever, like that player type, like for where Orlando wants to go, which I think we can discern pretty clearly from a trade like this, which is to the top of the conference, and several playoff rounds deep into the postseason, Simons is a guy that might get played off the floor against good matchups. And same thing for someone like Monk. Desmond Bane is not that guy. You don't attack Desmond Bane if you attack Desmond Bane with your number one scoring option, there's maybe a couple guys where you're like, oh, this is untenable. We have to do something, strategically different to double him or whatever, or switch or you're not hiding Desmond Bane on defense ever.
No, he's built like Kyle Lowry. He's a bigger Kyle Lowry.
Right.
That's the way he's built.
That's like, you have to view this acquisition, I think, even if you're saying still, this, not that you're saying this, but I'm sure there are people that like, he's just not worth it. It's like for where Orlando wants to go, the pool of guys that they could have put into this slot is not that big. Simons isn't in that pool. If you're like, we need a guy we can put on the floor at the end of the Eastern Conference Finals that the other team's not going at. And Bane is that guy, and I don't know who else that's even like pipe dream available would have fit that description.
Well, and if this was the cost of Bane, some of the names that we were throwing out, like a LaMelo Ball for this team, I think probably would have been a better fit. But if this is what it costs to get Desmond Bane, I think LaMelo Ball is probably like on a similar level, but you're probably paying more to get LaMelo Ball in that instance. Yeah. So and he's not
changes more about how you operate on both ends than Bane does. Right. And like you probably do want to change how you operate offensively, but you know what I mean? Like Bane just like slots right into whatever KCP was doing and is like, you're getting 3x what you got from that guy. Like that feels like just such a value add.
And I think too, what gets tricky, and this is maybe where you mentioned it's like in Desmond Bane for what they gave up, it's in line with the value he's providing and how much he helps. But you said the phrase opportunity cost. That's probably where you could start to feel uncomfortable because I think Bane helps this team out a lot. And if you told me as constructed they went and won the East last year, I would not be shocked. But like you still have a dearth of shooting, and you don't necessarily, if you want like a floor general type who can come in and manage the game, there are at least questions there. Do you think Suggs or Anthony Black? We know what Paolo can do and Franz can do in that regard. You could run some stuff through Wendell Carter Jr. and Bane himself. So yeah, you can approximate all that, but those are still questions. You just now don't have the assets or the flexibility to address them at it doesn't have to be at a super high level, but like sort of just forget about the floor general stuff. This team still needs shooters. Like it just can't be Desmond Bane coming in here as the only guy who's taking like 7 3-point attempts per game and knocking them down at a better than league average clip. How do you go about getting, like, are you just betting on Franz Wagner's jumpers going to improve rather than regress like it has the past couple years? Because in theory, KCP and Cole Anthony were like two of your more like, they weren't reliable, especially KCP, but in theory, they're supposed to be like some of your better shooters. This is a clear upgrade. I want to make that clear, but I don't think you can just by getting Desmond Bane, like that, to me, that doesn't turn you into a top 10 offense. Maybe your core lineup ends up producing at that level, but overall, there's still some kind of holes to pick at.
That's definitely true, and to now, because a lot of these your pick equities out of the picture. You know, if it turns out that this is not enough, then you have to start thinking about like, what's the market for Anthony Black? You know, let's peel off a defense first playmaking guard that we like and that showed improvement. Willie oh, Jesus Christ, Wendell Carter Jr. I have WCJ
Willie Cauley-Stein hit some
notes.
empty gym threes back in his day, so maybe they signed him.
You need Wendell Carter Jr. to be like the 37% guy. Who, by the way, I was looking at his numbers today in prep for this. Like the difference between a 25-year-old Miles Turner and Wendell Carter Jr. is not that big. Like the shot blocking's different, but Carter Jr. was part of just, Orlando's defense. Shocker, was very good with him on the floor. It's like 80th percentile points allowed per 100. When Suggs was out there with him, it was in the 90s. And if there's any like return to form in terms of 3-point percentage, and you get that volume from him up to like 4 or 5 a game, you got a pretty good Miles Turner clone, just albeit without the shot blocking. And yeah, like, can Franz be this bad? Is that possible? Is he really going to be like a high 20s, low 30s 3-point guy? I mean, there's enough if it breaks this way for Orlando that you might, top 10 offense is a high bar, but like you might get enough supplementary 3-point shooting where it's not 6 weeks into next season and it's like, God damn it, they're 28th in 3-point percentage again. I don't feel like that's likely if they don't add anybody else. There's enough upside with some of these players that I think, like maybe Jet Howard shows up. I don't know. Like there's a couple
they have
ways
to play him first, and that comes back to that's why
Well,
Bane works, because he'll help you on defense where Jet Howard will not. And the Magic just seem completely. I mean, if you were willing to put Jet Howard, Black, or Tristan Da Silva on the table, you still have some contracts to move around. You can't get a Cam Johnson, who would be like even more intriguing on this team now, probably, but that's still enough to get you somebody. I don't know who that's like when you're kind of looking at shooters. I don't know who that somebody is. But I don't, and I'm not saying like maybe it's just signing, like, do they get a Sam Merrill in free agency or something still, like to pay? They probably wouldn't play Sam Merrill, so I don't know what I'm saying. He's a little feistier on defense than Jet Howard. Yeah. I wanted to ask you this before we get into the Grizzlies, and this is more tied to the Magic, but it's an overarching just NBA question. It does feel like NBA teams have decided we know that our windows are going to be shorter and we're going to act like it. And I think some people have framed this from Memphis's perspective that look what the era of aprons did to them. And I think this was more about, no, like they knew they were stale and there just wasn't a clear pathway to them to get better. And we'll get into them. It doesn't seem like they're getting ready for a rebuild or anything, just that they're trying to change up the top of their roster and keep themselves leaner. But in the Magic's case, they're currently sitting $13.5 million into the tax. That's $6.7 million into the first apron and about $5.2 million below the second apron. Now, because they have those expensive, they have team options worth like, it's almost $20 million or over $20 million on Gary Harris or Mo Wagner. They can get out of the tax this year if they want to delay the repeater clock. But the point is, Paolo's going to sign a 5-year max extension. It will be either worth $246.7 million, or if he gets the language that Franz did, it could be worth up to $296 if he makes All NBA. They project next year to be a second apron team, even if Paolo is on that 25% max. And that's the calculations include 11 players, including Jonathan Isaac, who's non-guaranteed, and then just minimums. Mm-hmm. So, like, they're going to be straddling a tight line no matter what happens. And so I would sit here and say maybe next year they stomach it, they go through the second apron or find a way to duck it just a little bit. But, like, by 2027, 2028, I'm not betting on all 4 of Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Desmond Bane being on this team. And I think the Magic know that as well. And so do you think there's anything to the effect of that? Yeah, we've seen some teams. We're going to see it with Phoenix. We're going to see it with Boston this summer to where, and we saw it with the Clippers and the Nuggets last summer, who didn't even enter the second apron. That is going to be taboo for some teams completely. And there's going to be some teams that are like, we'll stomach it for a year. Is it going to happen for multiple years? We have to wait and see. And so I'm just wondering if NBA teams are kind of like entering not completely fuck it mode, because Bane's a really good player, but they're probably looking at it and saying, well, the risk is either not being good enough, or maybe we're good enough for 2 years and we just have to figure out how to cut salary and someone's going to have to go then.
Yeah, I think that is a good read on it. I hesitate to say that this is like a clear sign of the second that window seems cracked open, you like if whether, and really it's like, how ready is Banchero to be the best guy on a team that, you know, makes the conference finals or whatever, like, because you're always going to orient your window around how good is your best guy, like, can he just be the best player? You know, it's reductive, but I think that still is a thing. And I think it means, like, there's counter examples too, right? Like, I don't know, like the Rockets seem to be operating slightly more deliberately, but they don't have like 2 guys on about to be on, you know, rookie 30% maxes or whatever, or to at least a pair of 25s. Indiana's built weirdly and differently. Like they're not quite in this same boat. So like, I hesitate to say that like this trade is just proof positive that the second the window's open, you just make the big five first round asset trade and go for it. I do think it shows that teams need to be more willing to jump at the opportunity and like not quite like say we'll worry about 3 years from now, but it does feel like you need to be a little more finely calibrated and like, when are we going? And then when we're going, we're going to really make this, you know, the big trade to go, as opposed to like a more deliberate thing or just this assumption that like Oklahoma City may run into this, honestly, like, although they've got the picks to get off of anything they want to, but like, you don't get the rookie scale, benefit forever. Like the first contract, maybe this is what it is. Once you've got a guy that feels like a core piece on his, fun max, you got to start making some decisions, because there'll be a second one soon enough. And when you've got 2, it's like, this is either this is the group or it isn't, and you don't get forever to figure that out. So yeah, I think that's a good read on it. I hesitate to make any like proclamations about like how teams should operate, because I still don't know. I don't know what the trend's going to be.
I think they're still trying to figure it out, and I think the Magic are going to be an interesting case study for what is the stomach then, unless this for some reason doesn't pan out. But I think that they're just going to be a fantastic team as the end result. Mm-hmm. But they paid Suggs. They paid Wagner, and now they're about to pay Banchero, and that's when they made the decision. And like the Rockets are kind of on a similar trajectory to where they paid Şengün, they paid Green. Neither got as much as Suggs or Franz Wagner, of course. But like now Tari Eason and Jabari Smith Jr. are extension eligible. Yeah. So they're going to be reconciling with kind of the same thing, is that if you build through the draft, maybe you end up with a bunch of, like the Magic were more top heavy with it, where no one's worried about Jet Howard or Tristan DeSilva or Anthony Black getting this type of money. Right. But the Rockets are almost facing like a worse conundrum, because so many of their youngsters are considered higher end. I just think it's going to be fascinating, because we've spent so much time, well, how long are teams going to spend into the second apron, or how hard is it for them to navigate it once they're there? And this trade made me think, which I just applaud, like seeing the Magic go for it. I will say I think it's overdue, but like if this was the move we were waiting on, I kind of get it. But like now I'm kind of thinking, are teams just not expecting and I know you can never really plan like 4 and 5 years out, like everyone said, but now you're getting to a point where it feels like you can't even plan more than 2 years out, if that. And this trade, to me, I won't use the word proclamation. I'm not going to declare it, but to me, it does suggest that teams are going to operate on these more urgent, finite windows, and then you're gonna. It's not even just a matter of figuring out the rest later, but there's going to be some major cost cutting or upheaval within a very short amount of time.
I think that's a perfect transition to start talking about the Memphis side of this, because I think the other side of what you're talking about with the short windows is I think teams are going to pull the ripcord when the three guys that they thought were the core pieces of a contender do not appear to be that, and that's how you get Desmond Bane being traded from a team that was like, the Grizzlies had very high playoff hopes for the last several years. Like, injuries were a factor, and then the jaw stuff was a factor, but like, it was Bane, Morant, and Triple J, and now Bane's gone. And I think the Grizzlies are an example of teams that are like, well, we're not going to pay this much for this team, especially when you get an offer like they got. But maybe that's what tells on it, is like, when you have a group that isn't good enough that you thought was, you better move quickly to sort of recreate some flexibility, because you can't, especially in a mid or small market, just keep going forward with your same core three expensive guys and expect to do anything. So yeah, the Grizzlies here. The question is, where are they going? This is like,
can I actually ask you? I saw a lot of people just assume that it meant that they were going to tear it down, and my initial reaction, like initially, was, oh, now they're kind of built to just do anything. If they want to tear it down, sure. If they kind of want to sit and conserve and wait for the next guy to become available, they have the assets for that, or they have the assets to do that right now.
Yeah.
So that's like, I looked at it as a trade rooted in what you just said about all three guys, like seeing their price points elevated. And their core probably stayed together longer than it should have because of how the Jaren Jackson Jr. extension shook out as well.
That's true. No, I think really the first point to keep in mind is like, when someone comes with an offer of 5 first-round assets, and like we just talked through, like, you can put an asterisk next to that. There's not like any guaranteed top 10 picks in there, but 5 first-round assets and a couple of manageable contracts, one of which has a team option, for your third best guy that's coming off a down year that you're not really sure is, like, you just say yes. And so, yeah, no, I don't think this was something that I wasn't immediately like, oh my God, they're going to trade Ja now, like, which I think you saw a little bit of out there. This puts them in a position to either go get someone that they could be your Bane replacement, or they're just more flexible. Like they have these assets, they can remake the team however they want. I don't view it as like a clear, like, oh, the needle's pointing one way or the other, like, and we can't even, it's like, it's so obvious. I don't see it that way at all.
What becomes interesting about that, though, is, so then what do we expect them to do? Is it just to kind of, not that they would view 2026 as a gap year, but is it just they're kind of in wait and see mode, and it's, well, maybe this team, I probably wouldn't pick them. I haven't gone through it, so this is off the cuff. I don't think they'd be, as currently constructed, a top 6 team in the Western Conference, but do you, like, their cap space is lowered, and we're going to get into Jaren Jackson Jr. separately, but their cap space is lowered, so they're still going to have, let's assume they use their cap space on Triple J at some point. They'll have that $8.8 million room exception, so they can get better, and it still feels like they would need a wing, but like KCP is going to help. Like he makes Scottie Pippen Jr.'s and Jalen Wells' lives a lot easier on the defensive end now. But like, what do you view this team as? I guess it's a twofold question. If you're the Grizzlies, how are you approaching the rest of the offseason? Then what is it you look at this roster and think that it still needs?
I think you have to say they're a little bit worse on paper, although they have, with Anthony specifically, they've kind of given themselves a little more jaw insurance if there's another injury, like where it's no longer, because you lose Bane, you are going to need someone to do a little bit more playmaking. Anthony's not like a clear starter in that regard, but he can do it. And then having KCP there with Jalen Wells, Scottie Pippen Jr., like there is the backcourt depth is good enough now, I think. I don't know. What do they need? Like, I guess they still need that bigger wing so that like Jalen Wells or KCP isn't guarding like the 6'8" and 6'9" like combo forwards. I don't know. I guess like, yeah, bigger wing probably. And then if they lose Aldama, which I guess is a possibility, I don't want to jump too far ahead, then maybe you're going to need some more front court shooting. Edie's going to be out too. So I'm not sure they're in a position where it's like, oh, they need this type of player. They may just need to kind of see how the offseason plays out and maybe even take some of these assets into the year and assess it, November, December, see where they're at. I do think like that 6 to 9 range in the West feels kind of like where we're at. Unless we're dead wrong and this was a precursor, they are going to like dump some more salaries or do something crazy like that.
Well, yeah, it does feel like they're caught in the in-between, but you could have argued that they were caught there to begin with, and at least now you've replenished your draft. Well, you haven't replenished, you've just now you're teaming with it.
Yeah.
Because you have all your picks moving forward except for this year, and that's kind of a wash with getting the number 16 pick. So I think they're leaning into being caught in the in-between for the interim, and that I think if there's an opportunity, like if Jalen Brown, I know he's makes so much money, if the Celtics decide to trade him, maybe that's someone that Memphis. I didn't look at this and say, oh, they could get involved in KD sweepstakes, but I don't think they will. Maybe I think they're just biding their time now to see what's out there, and that they will make another big swing by the end of next offseason. I don't think they made it with the intent of we have to do that by this year. Maybe they'll be more once they have maybe they want to see what this team looks like, and then you make that move at the deadline, because what other team is going to be in a position to throw around so many first round picks at that point?
Well, and specifically, you just brought this into my head, the power players, like the asset-rich teams, tend to be like your Brooklyns and your Utahs. Oklahoma City's the exception, but there just aren't that many teams where the Grizzlies are that also can now turn around and say, we can kind of compete pick-wise and movable contract-wise. Because I do think both KCP and more so Cole Anthony, those are kind of numbers you like to have if you're trying to match salary, and you have the picks now to make it so that those can just be figures on a sheet, as opposed to somebody really wants KCP or Cole Anthony. They're a team now that feels like it's not a unique position, but it's sort of rare with the way the assets are kind of spread around the league. A pretty good team with a very good war chest of picks and young guys and movable contracts. That's a good place to be, I think. So I think you're right that down the line, whether it's next summer or even at this year's deadline, Memphis is someone you would want to watch for, because they just will be positioned to be we're one guy away from being top 4 in the West, or something like that, and we can act on that.
I think what's going to be telltale of what they're planning on doing, maybe not necessarily this offseason, but within the short term, Jaren Jackson Jr. And so the options now after this trade can be laid out as such. So we'll start here with their current cap space, which they're around $4.5 million. They can bump his salary up next season to $28 million and then extend him for 4 years and $175.6 million. Previously, that number was $190 when they had $7 million in cap space. Mm-hmm. Would you agree that that's not enough to get him to sign the renegotiate and extend, right?
I'd be pretty surprised. He's close to a max guy, I think, or maybe he just is a max guy.
What a segue. So they could just wait next year for unrestricted free agency, at which time his 4-year max from the Grizzlies would be $228.6 million, or his 5-year max would be $296 million. A max from another team would be capped at 4 years and $219.4 million. I think there's a part of me that if you just know he wants to be there, and he'll give you the last chance, right of refusal, I would almost prefer that way just to see how this season plays out. But he's an unrestricted free agent, so he could just leave. And I think that's why the create more cap space route is what there's been reporting from Mark Stein, Jake Fisher, and others that suggest they're going to create even more cap space. So his max salary, I wanted to ask you this, is $46.4 million for next season. He is $23.4 million shy of that. What is they have Cole Anthony, they have KCP, maybe you can compensate a team to take on John Conchar, and all of a sudden you're at $10 million in cap space. What is the number that you want to extend Jaren Jackson Jr. off of? Is it let's just say they can create to give him $35 million next year? Is that the extension then becomes, what would he be at over that 4-year extension then becomes $219.5 million. So is that oh, go ahead.
Funny.
Sorry.
It's right there on the 4-year. It's almost exactly down to the dollar of the 4-year max from that another team. So which segue by you. I was just going to say, if all this was part of a plan to create enough cap space to get the Jackson extension done now, which it's not enough yet. As you said, there would have to be 23-ish million trimmed to get there. I like the trade less if it was done with an eye toward let's make sure we lock him down now, because I feel pretty good as Memphis knowing that I can just wait until he hits unrestricted free agency, and then I forget who we were talking about, but it's like I'll do the Siakam thing in Indiana where it's like all I know is I can beat any team's 4-year offer. And so I can guarantee that I will be able to offer him more. And if I really got to go to that 5th year, then I'll do it. But like, it's not restricted free agency leverage, but it is knowing you can make the best offer. And so I'm waiting. I don't like the idea that this was all like, if a significant part of the Bane trade was so that we could clear cap space to just lock in Jackson at a big number now. Does that make sense? Like, and what do you think about that? Would you wait, or would you be making cuts to do it now?
I'm not. Look, if someone's going to just take John Conchar and it takes a 2nd-round pick, and you can get but you're also not nuking your flexibility, but you are adding money onto your immediate bottom line that you don't have to. And yes, I think I want players to get paid as much as they can, but if you're a team, you have to prioritize some semblance of flexibility here. So to now move assets to pay a player that's already on your team. We didn't like it when the Kings did it with Domantas Sabonis, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is a more valuable player in today's NBA. I mean, Domantas Sabonis is really good. That's just shots fired, but I don't if you can do it now, if he's going to sign for 4, here's why you would do it. I'm stumbling here. If bumping him up now gets him below market over the entirety of his extension. So the number I just laid out, no, I'm not creating an additional $10 million in cap space so that Jaren Jackson Jr. can sign a 4-year, $220 million extension. If Jaren Jackson Jr. wants to sign a $190 million like he was before, yeah, I'll go create the extra cap space to do it, or even a $200 million one. And I know that, it's an average of $5 million a season you're saving. That fucking matters. When you're dealing with these thin margins in the apron. So that's what would make me, because I don't think it would cost a ton to give a team, let's say Cole Anthony, and then take back a smaller salary, or just put John Conchar into some teams, mid-level, part of their mid-level exception. So I would consider that, but even if you're creating that additional cap space, I'm not giving it all to Jaren Jackson Jr. just so then I can pay him what I could just give him next offseason. So I get the logic of the renegotiate and extend, and it was kind of convenient when it was, what is $7 million in cap space going to do to you? That's less than the room exception that you could still use. But once you start getting into the habit of, now we're going to offload other stuff to drum that up, if that was part of the calculus here, I don't love it. I would actually like this trade more if they don't do anything, or if they're using John Conchar and Cole Anthony, they're attaching stuff to get more players in here, and then just paying Jaren Jackson Jr. next summer when he's actually a free agent.
That's the move. I think that has to be the move, because it just feels like you're giving up talent to pay more for the talent you currently have before you have to. That if that's if the cap space route and the trimming assets to get there is the plan, that just doesn't feel like good business to me.
No. So and doesn't it defeat the entire motif of us saying they did this so they could be malleable moving forward, and then they're going to begin that era by constraining themselves more than they have to?
That's why you can't do it. That's why. That's it.
Do you have anything else on this trade that you wanted to fire any takes off before we skedaddle?
No, I just think it's really good for Orlando, and I think there's a lot of upside for Memphis. It's kind of boring to say. I kind of like it for both sides. It makes sense to me. I would and let's end where we began, which is saying,
Shams was right.
Good luck. Yeah, Shams was right. This is the most craziest thing. You just can't predict what's going to happen. It's insane how many fake trades and what would so and so do this, or what do you think about this guy? And we just never once had, as far as I know, had Bane to Orlando.
Well,
so
to be fair, the Orlando side of it, I think anyone could have suggested Bane's a great fit. I really didn't expect the Magic to have these 4 expensive players on their books, even if it's only a theory until Paolo's extension kicked in. So that's why I may have come up with a LaMelo Ball trade for them at some point, but I probably had them trading Jalen Suggs or something.
Right.
And so if they would have made a move like this, I almost would have assumed that Suggs, or maybe less likely Wagner, would have been outgoing money. So I applaud them. I think it took them too long to address the offensive stuff, but I applaud them as a non-glamour market, although an underrated market if you want to play there. I applaud them for doing this, because they're going to make some tough decisions down the line. But I think this at least shows for the next 2 years, they're going to be pretty expensive, maybe more than they typically would have been comfortable with.
And if you're trying to be good, you're going to be expensive. So,
And these, by the way, these are the 2
be.
years to do it, I would argue, because that's why also like them ducking the tax this year to like, keep the repeater clock from starting. I don't even know how much value there is because these are the 2 years to just go for it because the Celtics, a gap year. And then after that, is Giannis still on the Bucks? And then also, Jason Tatum's coming back. Are we just going to assume that Jason Tatum is Jason Tatum in that first year? There might be a feeling out season for Boston. So these are the 2 years. We're talking about this short window. These are the 2 years in the East to really go for it.
Yep. And hey, kudos to the Magic. Although, as you said, like maybe pull this off a little sooner. Thanks everybody for listening, for watching. Remember, rate, review, subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, let us know what you think of the trade. Please, if you saw this coming, let us know so we can like employ you and have you feed us smart ideas because I didn't see it coming. Join our Discord, links for that in YouTube and podcast description. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.